Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. As the title stated, I want to talk about why Bitcoin is a better bet over gold for the near future and the long term. We will touch base on some basic facts and history about each asset, their timelines, average returns, profit and loss risks, if you were to buy at the top today, what it would look like 5, 10, 15 years from now. As we speak, both Bitcoin and gold are at their all-time highs. So you might be wondering, is now a good time to buy or should you wait? But before we get into the mix of it all, please remember that nothing here is financial advice, just my opinion and thoughts on the market. Please stay safe with your money and invest with care and patience. Don't FOMO or panic. Markets and assets of all sorts are always unpredictable. Let's start with gold. Gold has been around for thousands of years, but its price recording is dated back to 1833, when 1 ounce of gold was only $18.93. Now that may sound crazy cheap, but back then it wasn't. Fast forward to today and gold is over 2,900 and moving towards 3,000 very fast. That's over 190 years of recorded growth, and gold has over 150x since it started being tracked against a dollar. Now that's about 4 to 5% average returns per year for the last 190 years. However, a major big thing to keep in mind is that gold was around $20 to $40 from 1833 through 1970s. Gold stayed around that price until the 1970s because, as you may know, in 1971 the gold standard was ended and gold has been booming ever since.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets. Let me lay to rest the bugaboo of what is called devaluation. If you want to buy a foreign car or take a trip abroad, market conditions may cause your dollar to buy slightly less. But if you are among the overwhelming majority of Americans who buy American-made products in America, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today.
Yes, you heard that right. The president of 50 years ago said today's dollar will be the same as tomorrow's dollar. But we see that it has been nothing like that, and the dollar has lost over 90% of its value over time. Gold has seen most of its returns year over year after 1971. Up until then, everything was very stable. But now, due to infinite money printing, loss of trust in the dollar all around the world, inflation, and all these sorts of problems coming all at once and so suddenly, is what's causing the dramatic price shock in gold. Gold has gone up over 20% last year, and this year it looks like it will be something similar with the way it's moving. Let's touch on a couple more things before we move to talk about Bitcoin. Let's assume you bought at an all-time high. How long would it take to break through for a profit? Let's look at some recent timelines. Like if you were to buy in August of 2020, the good old COVID times, let's say you bought at $2,030. You would not see a breakthrough until March of 2024. That's almost 4 years to break past your buying point, and you would have to add a couple months of sudden growth over 6 months to make a 30% profit, give or take 30%. This isn't bad. However, let's look into another example. If you bought in 2011 at $1,850, you would not break past that buying point until 2020 and still wait until 2024 to make a profit of any sort. But that's almost 13 years of waiting, only to barely break a profit, which would all have been eaten up by inflation of the past 13 years that you waited. And this is what's very bad.
There's actually no ceiling on the price of gold because there's no floor on the dollar. I mean, if we have hyperinflation, the worst case scenario, it won't matter how many dollars you have. You could have trillions and you won't be able to buy an ounce of gold. Now, I don't expect that. Hyperinflation is not my base case scenario. It's just an extreme worst case scenario. But I do expect the dollar to lose a considerable percentage of its value relative to gold, way more than 50%. I would say on the magnitude of 70 to 90% of the dollar's purchasing power is going to be lost. So if the dollar were to lose 90% of its purchasing power, the price of gold would go up tenfold, which would put it at 20,000, right? And that might be an extreme, but that's where it could go if we see a 90% loss.
Gold has been pushing to new all-time highs these past couple of years, only because of all the trouble the world has been through. 2020 COVID, all the money printed afterwards, the war in Russia and Ukraine, the war in Palestine, and now President Trump pushing tariffs and trying to make major changes with unknown consequences.
We may have short-term some little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. We have deficits with almost every country, not every country, but almost. And we're going to change it. It's been unfair. That's why we owe $36 trillion. We have deficits with everybody. We help everybody. We've been helping everybody for years. And to be honest, I don't think they appreciate it.
Gold prices shoot up when everything becomes unpredictable and people are worried for the future. However, if everything calms down a bit and the new administration doesn't do anything crazy and out of the blue, the price of gold could possibly pull back to as low as $2,500 or stay around where it's at right now and wouldn't climb so much higher. But this is just my opinion. Assuming the wars come to an end and Trump's trade war is not out of control, but only time will tell. Before we move into Bitcoin, just a quick reminder for you to please subscribe, give this a thumbs up or down, and comment below what you think. Now moving on to Bitcoin.
What is Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is the world's first engineered monetary system. And what happened is a set of engineers, nameless engineers, recoiled in horror after the great financial crisis with all the bank bailouts. And they looked and they said, this just isn't fair. It isn't right. We want to create a better money. And they used two technologies. They used the internet, the idea that I could network hundreds of thousands or millions of computers. And they used cryptography, the idea that I could cryptographically sign something so that it could not be tampered with anyone, friend or foe.
Let me tell you a real quick sad story. It's October 2010 and one Bitcoin is valued at less than 10 cents. Yes, it can be stressful, don't think about it. Now let's fast forward 15 years and we are around $100,000 for one Bitcoin, give or take a couple thousand. And what's even crazier is that the future of Bitcoin looks brighter today than it ever did. Today, more people want exposure to Bitcoin and their investments. Companies want to buy and secure the foundation. Banks want to hold it. Countries want to save their economy by buying Bitcoin. Institutions of all sorts are working to learn, adapt, and acquire it. The world is just learning about it now and slowly taking action. I don't have to tell you that Bitcoin is capped at 21 million. I don't have to tell you that mining Bitcoin is not easy and cannot be controlled, manipulated, broken, or stopped. We know that no single entity, government, or person has control over Bitcoin. But most may not know that Bitcoin has returned a positive return on investment every 4 years. Bitcoin, as you can see on this chart, throughout its history has returned 3 positive years and 1 negative, followed by another 3 positive and another negative, and so on. If the pattern stays the course, Bitcoin should end 2025 in the green and have a pullback in 2026. However, I think this cycle could be different because now it's not just everyday people buying Bitcoin and selling after small profits. Now every bank, company, and country wants to buy Bitcoin. And with the Trump administration, this is more likely to happen. And this is bad because these big players, they only buy, they don't sell. They know how to borrow against their assets. Some of them can print their own fiat money or just issue more shares of stock and just buy all the Bitcoin they can. This leaves people like you and I far behind. The average Joe can't play and can't compete with the buying power of these mega money makers. Aside to all that we spoke about, Bitcoin keeps going up in value whether the global economy is on fire or at peace. Bitcoin lives in a world of its own and moves at its own pace. It has proven itself worthy many times over. With all that in mind, let's bring it to a conclusion. And let me be transparent. I own a little bit of both Bitcoin and gold. The gold I have is more collectible and sentimental. It's not a growth or get-rich investment for me. But Bitcoin is strictly a growth and get-rich, be-free investment. But to each their own. You guys let me know what you think is the best investment for the next 5, 10, 20 years will be. And we'll talk again soon.